I stood next to the cake table as my 15-year-old niece, Josie McIntyre, unwrapped the plastic from the Sable S1 phone I had just given her. She let out a laugh, her fingers light against the box as though it might break. My mother always says, if I vanished tomorrow, nobody would probably notice. She uses that line as if it were a joke. It sounds like a teasing remark, with an edge hidden beneath the sweet tone only teenagers manage. Laughter echoed from across the space. 24 voices, relaxed and unburdened. My sister, Clara Goodwin, Josie's mother, didn't lift her gaze from her wine glass. She lounged on the sofa, legs crossed, wearing a sly smile. It was the satisfied grin of someone whose plan had succeeded exactly as she wanted. My mother, Natalie, was in the kitchen this whole time, gently mixing food she wouldn't touch herself. She kept silent, but the subtle rise of her shoulders was a familiar sign. That movement told me she approved. My father was settling in his faded old armchair near the sliding door. He didn't even try to hide what he was doing as he opened the doors. He lifted his beer in acknowledgement. "Well," he chuckled, "she's telling the truth." That's exactly how things go with my relatives. Instead of arguing, we always make everything into a joke. Uncle Ray let out a laugh, pressing his napkin to his face. My cousin Jordan, who once needed cash urgently for dental bills and never returned a cent, applauded as though Josie had cracked a joke on late-night television. Meanwhile, I just remained there like usual. I was the one who purchased the Sable S1 phone. I was also the one who covered the overdue Greenleaf Arts Academy payments last autumn when Clara forgot. I was the one who added all of them to my StreamRite account because Natalie couldn't figure out how to log in on the television. I was always the person who showed up, and evidently, now I was the one they claimed wouldn't be missed. Josie gazed up at me, her expression open and guileless, a smile still on her face. "Thanks for the phone, Aunt Mara." I swallowed hard, then gave a faint nod. "My name is Mara Brewster. I'm 38 years old enough to recognize when a space doesn't want me, even if I'm picking up the tab." I stayed quiet. I slid my Sable S1 phone from my pocket. 2 taps. Power disconnected, streaming turned off, shared line ended, mortgage autopay canceled. With that, I vanished. It went unnoticed. That was the last free thing I ever handed over to them. I skipped the cake. As they began to light candles, I took my coat from the hook by the laundry area and quietly slipped out. Nobody came after me. Nobody realized I was gone. The chill stung the inside of my throat. A January in Oregon never lets me forget the true feeling of quiet, the sting of cold slipping beneath my collar to my skin, the sort that makes my shoulders draw up even when I don't intend it to. I didn't go back, at least, not yet. Instead, I drove over to Walnut Heights Apartments on the other side of town, my place at Walnut Heights Apartments. I'd made a home there for 9 years. It had been long enough for the carpet to mold around the imprint of my footsteps. Yet that night, it felt more like being inside a waiting area. It wasn't mine. Not any longer. By the entrance, I slipped off my shoes. Not out of routine, but because it felt like a final gesture. There was no reason to hurry. The tears never came. I didn't shout or throw things into a bag the way women do in the movies. I fixed myself a cup of tea. Afterwards, I opened the closet and reached for an old black backpack on the shelf that hadn't been used since my college days. Its nylon was faded at the edges, and the zipper was stiff from lack of use over the years. But it still worked. I packed it with care and without hurry. Inside went a folder filled with printouts of the utility bills I had paid. I added a thumb drive marked Family Records with my handwriting on it. I also put in the folder with paid tuition forms from Greenleaf Arts Academy. There was an old photo of me and June Parker, from when her fingers were still nimble enough to win at Scrabble. And then, folded neatly, I found an official legal document, a quitclaim deed, properly signed and notarized, handing complete ownership of Riverwood Retreat to me. The date on it was 8 months before she passed. No one else knew about this. My sister still spoke as though the house was hers. The children absolutely adored the endless days and nights up there, she'd usually mention. Someday, we might fix the place up. I never set her straight. At the time, I believed letting them assume things would be simpler than explaining the truth. But now, Riverwood Retreat truly belonged to me, and I no longer felt the need to justify it to anybody. I closed my backpack and set it beside the entrance. I also packed a second, smaller overnight bag, just the necessities: a fresh outfit, toothbrush, charger for my Sable S1 phone, and a flashlight. After that, I sat in silence for quite a while. Walnut Heights apartments vibrated gently with quiet sounds. It was just like it always was. There was the soft hum of the fridge, the distant noise of cars, and the mechanical pop from the heater that had never worked properly. Nothing huge happened, just ordinary life gradually withdrawing. At 1:49 a.m., I was standing there with both bags over my shoulder, flipping off the lights. I didn't leave a note or say farewell. I drove through Salem in the darkness. The area around Willow Court residence was hushed. It was the kind of stillness that comes from knowing security, from never worrying about how I would keep the heat on for the next month. They didn't have to worry, because I had always covered it, at least up until tonight. I crept up toward Willow Court residence as quietly as if I were sneaking in, but I wasn't there to take anything. I was there to give something back. I placed the backpack at the foot of the stairs so it would be impossible for them to miss it in the morning. After that, I left, this time for good. When they finally got around to opening it, I was already beyond the Oregon state line. I was already heading away to recover something they hadn't realized was missing. People always say that systems fail gradually, then all at once. By 7:41 a.m., my sister Clara had phoned me 3 times. By 8:17, my mother sent a message. "Something's up with the Wi-Fi. Can you take a look?" By 8:32, my father's Medicart pharmacy app rejected his insurance for the refill, and by 9:02, the FreoTemp thermostat switched over to cold. I ignored all of them. Instead, I found myself at Banner's Diner in the next town, drinking bitter black coffee that brought to mind scorched coins, gazing at a quiet parking lot still thick with sleep. At 1 p.m., the silence shattered. Clara once more. This call came from a new number. What is happening? Natalie is in a panic. Gordon is raising his voice. None of the utilities work. The cable is out. Josie has an online exam this week, and the internet is completely gone. I kept letting it ring. Then a follow-up text arrived. Was this really how you meant to punish us? Honestly, act your age. A grin formed on my lips. It wasn't because anything amused me. It was the anxiety I recognized so well, though I'd never been allowed to be a part of it. At 3:15 p.m., an email arrived from the mortgage company. Auto payment had failed, said the subject line. They were issuing a past due alert. Nobody else had ever seen that message. I would always send it to myself. At 4:45 p.m., my mother, Natalie Brewster, sent a text. Mara, your father, Gordon, is very upset. I have no idea what you're thinking. This family is coming undone. Coming undone? That was ironic coming from Natalie. For 17 years, I'd watched her cling to her glass of wine more tightly than to my arm. She repeated the same phrase each time Clara messed up again. She's just trying to sort things out. You're the dependable one, Mara. Thank heavens for you. But it was never appreciation. It was passing off responsibility, and I refused to keep shouldering that task. At 7:25, there was a knock at my Walnut Heights apartment's door. 3 brisk, exasperated knocks echoed. I remained perfectly still. Now, heavy pounding. Mara, open this goddamn door. It was my father, Gordon Brewster speaking. He hadn't set foot in Walnut Heights apartments in the last 5 years. The last time was when I left to give Clara and her child some room, after her divorce forced them back into Willow Court residence, along with a heap of debt. I waited silently behind the door, stiff as the wall itself. You really think you can just shut us all out? You think this gives you control? There was a clatter on the doorknob, but it stopped as quickly as it began. We brought you up. You owe us everything. Don't pretend you're above your family. You're nothing more than a resentful little woman with a job. He held his ground. I outlasted him in the silence. After a while, I caught him saying something under his breath. It might have been a curse, or maybe he softly spoke my name as he turned and left. His footsteps sounded more tired as he departed than when he'd first arrived. I returned to my seat at the table, the one where I'd celebrated Thanksgiving. I ended up alone 3 years ago because we planned a more intimate family meal this time. Just Clara and the children. They always labeled it smaller whenever I wasn't on the guest list. I cooked some pasta and uncorked a bottle of wine I'd been saving without any reason in mind. By 9:45, my sister had posted on Twin Link Social to ask if others had also experienced utility hacking. One of my cousins commented, "Isn't Mara your IT sister? Maybe she would know how to fix it, LOL." Clara didn't answer that. The next day, I woke up to 19 missed calls. 5 from my mother, 6 from Clara, and 2 from Josie, her very first time calling. The last one was a message. "There's a black bag on the stairs. Did you put it there?" I didn't answer. She'd once told me I could disappear and nobody would care. Suddenly they couldn't look away. They opened it all together. My mother later shared the whole story with a neighbor. I have a feeling I wasn't present for that, but I can easily picture how things played out. It remained untouched near the stairs for about a day and a half. They thought it must have been something Josie McIntyre left behind, or possibly a donation from one of my sister Clara's friends. No one considered it might be mine. That is, until the water supply was completely cut off. Not until Luke Goodwin had to use the gym's facilities, because the house pipes had gone completely cold, did they decide to see what was inside. The bag was made of black nylon, with a rigid zipper, and there was nothing remarkable about it. It's the sort of item I might ignore for years, shrugging it off as containing nothing important. Yet what I had carefully packed inside were all the things they failed to remember. The very first thing my mother pulled out happened to be a folder. It contained printed PDF statements detailing the last 5 years of utility bills. Each document carried a yellow sticky that said, "Paid by Mara Brewster Electric." Gas, garbage, internet, pest management. After that were my father, Gordon Brewster's, pharmacy receipts, co-pays, the fees for delivery, the urgent inhaler renewals. I never once mentioned to them that I was always the one who reset his account whenever he couldn't remember the password. He assumed the system just automatically recognized him. Then there were 2 invoices for school tuition, both from Josie McIntyre's Greenleaf Arts Academy. My sister, Clara Goodwin, always claimed there was some kind of partial scholarship, but the remainder always came from the same account number connected to me. Slipped between the letters, I spotted a shopping list. Not one of mine, but my mother, Natalie Brewster's. I had come across it in her handwriting years back. On the opposite side, I wrote, "Everything listed here paid $10,420. You insisted that I not mention to my father that you had misplaced the card again." Then there was the flash drive. I'm not sure how long they waited to access it. Maybe they assumed there was malware. Or maybe they told themselves it was just empty. But it was not. 4 directories inside: audio messages, screenshots, and text files. June Parker. She was my grandmother. I had kept every single voicemail she ever left me. She didn't leave many. Yet the last voicemail came just before the stroke. Her tone was trembling, but unmistakable. "Mara. Darling, I finalized the documents. The house now belongs to you. I'm aware they won't appreciate it. That doesn't matter to me. Only I bothered to be present. I'll keep it under wraps until necessary. Afterward, I let out a raspy, quiet laugh. My, they'll really despise this. Excellent. Attached, there was also a scanned PDF of the quitclaim deed bearing my grandmother's signature, notarized, stamped, and officially recorded in my name, confirming my sole possession of Riverwood Retreat in Wasco County, the same property my sister redecorated last year without consulting anyone, the one my father still labeled as our family's heritage. I pictured them sitting motionless upon receiving that, because after the piles of bills, the endless names, every yellow sticky note, every recorded voicemail and screenshot of my sister referring to me as a paycheck in a pantsuit. After everything else, a final object remained. A photograph. It was a weathered image, showing me with my grandmother, June Parker, sitting together on the porch swing at Riverwood Retreat. I must have been 15. She was grasping my hand. She had inscribed something on the back in trembling blue pen. She always remembered my birthday when no one else did. I deserved something permanent. I wasn't there when they found it, but I wish, just this once, they had taken their time reading it, since it was the only farewell I managed. And it wasn't meant for them. It belonged to her. Yet he included me as if nothing was wrong. No sorry, no reasoning, only a single-line message. Section 125D. Game night. We should talk. Before setting down my Sable S1 phone, I went over it 3 times. He still acted like this needed bargaining, but I agreed because at that point he possessed the backpack, and I was certain he'd already read what I had hidden inside, or at the very least, given it a quick glance. Ridgeview Field was crowded to capacity. There was a strong scent of hot metal, melting snow, and mustard in the air. The noise wasn't caused by the actual game, but by everyone needing an excuse to shout. It was easy for me to spot him. My father sat right where he promised, cradling the black backpack on his knees, as if it were either a prize or a warning. He looked much older than I remembered, like a man desperate to protect a history he couldn't risk anyone questioning. I took a seat 2 chairs from him, not right beside, but just far enough so it showed I wasn't trying to disappear. My father didn't greet me, simply flashed a smile like he was the one allowing me another opportunity. He drummed his fingers on the bag. He referred to it as our private little time bomb. He claimed it was bound to fall apart. He asserted that nobody would accept that a stack of bills, a voicemail from someone no longer living, and a property deed my grandmother likely hadn't intended to authorize were enough. He spoke in a low, cutting rush, too hurried and pointed, as if he recognized his argument was failing, but felt compelled to continue just to bolster his own confidence. I observed him. His fists were clenched so tightly that his knuckles had turned pale. The edge of his mouth twitched back and forth, wavering between swagger and something that more closely resembled fear. I tried repeatedly to laugh it off, but there was no humor to be found. He accused me of being harsh, said I had shamed the family, that everyone had seen the footage, the bag, the bills, the recorded voice, and believed I was bent on payback. He said, Natalie cried, that Clara couldn't sleep, that Josie had to answer questions at Greenleaf Arts Academy. Then at last, he looked at me and asked, "What do you want?" I turned with deliberate slowness, looked at him, then glanced at the other people around us. The surrounding noise faded into a blur. Popcorn vendors and fans shouting at the referee mixed with laughter that came from neither of us. I stayed silent, since he already knew the truth. He was just avoiding saying it outright. All he wanted was to control the story, the perception, the optics. Yet paper doesn't deceive the way people do. I got to my feet. He caught hold of my sleeve. I brushed his hand away. Not aggressively, just firmly enough. I took a single row up, then turned back to face him. He recoiled as if I'd just started shouting into a mic, but my tone remained even. I didn't have to yell. "My name is Mara Brewster," I declared so everyone in Section 125D could hear. "And for 17 years, I supported this family so it could run. Not because anyone requested it, but because no one believed I'd ever refuse." Heads turned our way. A woman near the aisle muttered to the person beside her, "Isn't that the Brewster girl?" I covered the electric bills, tuition at Greenleaf Arts Academy, debt at Sheltering Pines Medical Center, and groceries. And when I paused, they accused me of being the one who left them behind. I presented the folder, the very same one I had prepared on the night I vanished. Light reflected off the crest on the deed. Someone in the background took a photo. This document is the transfer deed for Riverwood Retreat, signed by my grandmother, June Parker, 8 months before she passed away. She handed it to me, as I was the only person who remained when she became unable to walk. My father started to mention something about heritage and misunderstandings over inheritance, but I cut him off. "You always said I should feel grateful you brought me up, but that's not how it really happened." I raised myself, and afterward, I took care of everyone here. I moved closer and let the folder fall at his feet. "You don't need to approve of this, but you can't keep lying about it anymore." After that, I went up the stairs. I didn't hurry. I also made sure not to glance over my shoulder. It struck me that, for the very first time, I wasn't fleeing an argument. What I was truly leaving behind was a part I'd always played, shutting that chapter firmly closed. No one reached out that evening, yet when daylight arrived, my Sable S1 phone throbbed with desperation. There were 23 missed calls, Clara, Natalie, and a single one from Josie. Then the texts arrived. At first, the messages carried blame. My sister accused me of disgracing us all, told me Josie was in tears, and pointed out that Twin Link Social knew nothing of the real story. She wrote that I'd used honesty as a weapon, implying that was even worse than keeping things hidden. After that, the guilt crept in. My mother's voicemail was barely above a whisper. It was that careful softness my mother reserved for when she needed a favor, but wasn't asking outright. "Mara, please. This isn't how we do things. We're still family. We just have to get together and talk." My father isn't saying anything. Clara sounded disheartened. "I wish you were here." I played the message a single time, then erased it. That was the furthest extent of mercy I could manage. By later that day, the narrative had shifted yet again. Evidently, someone had gotten footage of the Ridgeview Field incident. Perhaps a neighbor. Maybe one of those people glued to their Sable S1 phone, craving instant justice. It began circulating widely on the internet. There were no personal identifiers. Only my steady voice reciting every expense I had ever covered for those now pretending I had vanished. I wasn't the one to upload it, though there was no need. The facts move easily whether I approve or not. That evening, my niece Josie McIntyre sent me a voice recording. It held just a single sentence, soft and shaking. I never intended for things to turn out this way. I had no idea it would make a difference. She left out what it referred to, the gathering, that phrase, the glance that followed afterward. But for the first time, Josie spoke my name as though it truly mattered. I didn't respond. Not from anger, but because I was done. After 3 days had passed, someone sent me a screenshot of a Twin Link Social post. In the image, my mother is standing next to my sister and my niece, all smiling as if loss had somehow made her more resilient. The accompanying caption read, "There are times when families face difficult periods, but love has a way of prevailing. Forgiveness is our belief, even if it goes unreciprocated." Just beneath it, the comment said, "You're an incredibly strong mom. It's inspiring to see how I handle this so gracefully. Family ultimately triumphs. The narrative is mine now. The past, rewritten. I decided not to reply. I didn't offer corrections because the truth wasn't something I felt the need to carry back into Willow Court residence. That burden had already been set down for them to see. A few days later, I found myself sitting barefoot at my kitchen table. My hands wrapped around a mug of tea that was growing cool. Walnut Heights Apartments was silent, but it felt like a peace I'd had to work for. There were no buzzing messages or supposedly concerned voicemails laced with quiet threats. Then a final note arrived from my father. In 6 words, he wrote, "You'll regret this. We will not." I put my Sable S1 phone down and allowed its screen to go dark. After that, I navigated to my settings, blocked his number, then did the same for Clara's, and finally for Natalie's. This wasn't out of spite or to retaliate, but because this time, choosing quiet wasn't an act of defeat. It was something I actively chose. For the first time, I had control over that choice. Riverwood Retreat felt smaller than I remembered. There was paint flaking by the windows, gutters hanging off in places, and the old porch swing was nowhere to be seen. Yet, like me, it remained, unchanged in its endurance. The transfer had gone through without fuss several weeks earlier, all according to the law, without a sound. Staff at the Wasco County Clerk office asked if I needed to let relatives know. I simply shook my head. They would find out when the time came. Stepping inside, I caught the scent of dust and river air, both always present in the place. My grandmother's faded floral sofa still sat in the living room, stubborn and washed out by sunlight. Upstairs, a slow drip came from the bathroom faucet. Meanwhile, the guest room had turned into a heap of abandoned summer crafts, mostly my sister Clara's handiwork. I packed away anything that wasn't supposed to be there and left the rest behind. Still untouched. There are certain things in life that shouldn't be scrubbed away, only set aside. In the kitchen, I set down a single item, a photograph of me and June Parker, the same one I had stashed in my bag. The ink of her writing on the back had started to disappear, but I never needed words to keep her in my mind. I deserve something with permanence. Beyond the walls, Riverwood Retreat stretched slow and wide as always, indifferent to whoever tried to lay claim to it. With a coffee mug in my grip, I stayed on the porch steps, my inbox empty. There were no messages, no obligations, no crises, only the bite of the air, the feel of the wooden step beneath me, and the gentle hush. It wasn't the kind of silence that made me feel insignificant. It was the kind that allowed me to breathe more fully. I skipped posting anything about the house. I kept my arrival to myself, but I did submit a change of address. Because at times, you don't need to have everything resolved. You have to put your previous life aside, let it ring without picking up, and step fully into the life that rightfully belonged to you all along.